turbulence. It's so light, isn't it?
As the song goes, there are 9 million bicycles in Beijing. Rachel Reeves wants a few more, as long as they're British, and made by this luxury bike brand popular in the Chinese capital.
You wouldn't usually carry it about like that, would you?
Defending her decision to travel here after heavy criticism. The Chancellor's aim to improve economic ties and reset the relationship between the UK and China.
Growth is the #1 mission of this Labour government, and to grow the economy we need to help great British businesses export around the world, like Brompton Bikes are doing here. And that's why I've got with me a delegation of senior UK finance bosses to unlock tangible benefits to help British businesses.
The Treasury estimates that agreements have been made worth £600 million to the UK economy over the next 5 years, and reckons it'll end up delivering something like £1 billion all in. But with UK borrowing costs at the highest in 16 years and a plummet in the value of the pound, Conservatives have accused Ms Reeves of fleeing to Asia. The Labour government's been at pains to say this thawing is all about pragmatism and that it isn't the attempted creation of another golden era. UK-China relations have blown hot and cold for years. There was the 2015 state visit where President Xi met the late Queen in what was described as a milestone visit for Anglo-Chinese ties. Lately, it's been a bit cooler because there are some very thorny issues. But the Treasury says deeper cooperation doesn't mean it can't challenge China over allegations of spying, its support for Russia, malicious cyber activity or rights and freedoms in places like Xinjiang and Hong Kong.
Economic globalization and multilateralism are currently being hindered and challenged. China and the UK should shoulder the responsibilities of major countries together, strengthen dialogue and cooperation, work together to tackle challenges and contribute wisdom and strength to building an open world economy.
Those challenges he's talking about likely include the US, with Donald Trump promising new tariffs on day one of his presidency. How the UK's actions will all go down in DC, a bit of an unknown at this stage. And a long-time Donald Trump ally and friend had something to say about it at Reform UK's conference in Chester today.
Rachel Reeves, of course, is currently in China. Or should I say, China. And I guess going to China and begging the Chinese to buy British government bonds is just one step away from going to the IMF.
And Mr Farage has indicated that his bromance with Elon Musk is still intact after the tech billionaire claimed Reform UK needed a new leader. 10 Reform councillors in Derbyshire have resigned in protest over Mr Farage's leadership, saying the party had lost its sense of direction and was being run in an increasingly autocratic manner.
I don't mind in the least if people say things about me. It's called free speech. It's called living in liberty. It's called living in a democracy. And perhaps one of the advantages is that we're not classic career politicians.
So the cycles of conscious uncoupling and recoupling continue, and there are risks of betting on partnerships that have not always felt dependable.
Well, joining me now is the Labour MP Liam Byrne, who's chair of the Business and Trade Committee and author of a book called Turning to Face the East: How Britain Can Prosper in the Asian Century. Liam Byrne, do you think there's much to be gained from Rachel Reeves' visit to China at a time of economic turmoil, shall we say, at home?
I think it's essential that the Chancellor engages with the Chinese. There are some big points that we need to land with the Chinese right now. So straight talking on human rights, straight talking on the need to maintain peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. And we're going to have to align our economic security arrangements more closely with the United States, I think, in the future. And we need to talk about that up front. But the big point that I think the Chancellor has got to land in China is the need actually for China to get its economy in better shape. At the moment, it's very investment-led. They need to unlock consumer spending because right now China runs a trade surplus with the rest of the world of about $1 trillion. They run a trade surplus with us. they need to unlock the power of consumer spending in China so that countries like us are exporting more things to them, everything from, Jaguar Land Rovers through to HSBC bank accounts.
Right, but is it possible to land both of those messages, the economic messages and the human rights and security concerns? Ian Duncan Smith, the former Conservative leader, says, and I quote, "It's as bad as dealing with Nazi Germany in the 1930s.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I mean, China is now, by some measures, the world's biggest economy in terms of purchasing power parity. You can't not have a relationship with the Chinese. There are some big global tasks that we've got to accomplish together, not least figuring out how we're going to get global coordination for the climate finance deal that's been agreed at COP, for instance. But look, grown-up statespeople need to talk to each other. The world is dangerous enough right now without people refusing to engage and talk Turkey.
Yeah, but some say that China is making the world more dangerous. I mean, whether that's, alleged spies infiltrating the royal family, or whether it's China's plans to flood the UK market with electric vehicles, which could then be tampered with at a further stage. I mean, we've got to be really on our mettle, haven't we?
100%. But I mean, the way to do that is not by refusing to talk to the Chinese. Dialogue is always going to be better. And that's why, in my experience, the key thing is to be upfront and actually to be quite, to display a kind of a muscular pragmatism with China. One of the things that I think went wrong in the past with David Cameron and George Osborne is that we stopped landing our key points on, for example, human rights or the need for peace and security in the Taiwan Strait. And actually, the Chinese don't respect that. We have to kind of talk about the full agenda with them, from human rights to Xinjiang to Taiwan to Jimmy Lai, through to the need for them to sort out their economy to drive up consumer spending.
You mentioned the US earlier. The US has distanced itself from China. It's pretty tricky, isn't it, for Rachel Reeves to try and get a sort of better trading relationship with America, just at the time that Donald Trump is threatening to unleash tariffs on the world, and also Elon Musk has unleashed online war on the UK government.
But have they? I mean, if you actually look at the numbers will tell a very different story. What the numbers show is that the US-China trading relationship is pretty much back to where it was before COVID.
OK, but they made some pretty aggressive noises. Trump is proposing.
They have, but for this reason, that China is running a $1 trillion trade surplus with the rest of the global economy. And China does need to restructure its economy. It needs to rely much less on investment, and it needs to start driving consumer spending much harder. Now, the way that President Trump is going to try and persuade the Chinese to do that is with tariffs. If the UK starts playing around with tariffs, we're not going to get very far. But we, if you like, have got a shared agenda with the United States to actually try and get the Chinese to sort their economy out. OK,
there's not much sign of that shared agenda when you come to Elon Musk, and he's going to be one of Donald Trump's close advisors. Are you concerned? Are you worried about his meddling in UK politics when you look at what he's saying online? A lot of the lies and misinformation are coming out.
I think Elon Musk has gone completely off the rails. I mean, to see somebody like this who is now interfering in politics around the world and the company that he keeps. There is an old saying in politics that you do judge people by the company he keeps. And if he is now advocating support for far right people like Tommy Robinson or the characters in the AfD in Germany, then I'm afraid that is going to provoke a reaction in capitals and in parliaments around the world, and he better be ready for that.
Right. Just finally, obviously Rachel Reeves is in Beijing at a time when there is all this economic turmoil at home. There's reports that the Treasury are now looking at spending cuts because of the rising costs of borrowing and the falling pound. Is that the right decision to prioritise spending cuts? Is there scope, for example, to cut welfare, which is what the government's talking about?
Well, I mean, you've basically got three options. You can try and grow the economy faster, you can restrain spending, or you can introduce more taxes. Those are basically your three options as Chancellor. I think taxes have now gone up pretty much as far as they can go. What is really needed quite quickly is a growth plan. But if Rachel Reeves is running out of headroom, then I'm afraid spending constraints are going to have to take the burden. No question about that. What is absolutely, essential is that she sticks by the rules that she has laid out, and I have every confidence that that is exactly what she's going to do.